Okay, hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining OmniHR's webinar, Strategic AI Implementation for People-Centered Organizations. My name is Kelsey Breton. I'm Head of Content and Community here at Omni. If you're not familiar, OmniHR is a modern, customizable HR management platform that simplifies how organizations manage their multi-country workforce. We empower HR teams and business leaders to build high-performing global teams while meeting compliance requirements and cultural nuances across borders. So built specifically for multi-country complexity across APAC, Omni unifies our entire employee lifecycle from talent acquisition and onboarding to performance management and multi-country payroll into a single data-driven workspace. And through our community, the People Collective, we host in-person and virtual events to bring together HR professionals across the region, building community and sharing knowledge around relevant HR topics and skills, as well as connecting in our virtual community to share resources and grow your HR connections. I'll share more information at the end on how you can get involved. Without further ado, I'd love to introduce our esteemed panelists. So today with me, I have Anita Krishan. She's a globally recognized work futurist and award-winning culture leader with 2 decades of experience scaling high-growth companies, including TikTok, Grab, and Trivago. As Chief Culture Officer at Hoogly AI, she is redefining how organizations engage, coach, and lead through AI-powered insights rooted in clarity and behavioral science. Anita speaks worldwide on the human-AI collaboration, conscious leadership, and building cultures where people and performance thrive. Welcome, Anita.
Amazing. Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you. We also have Satchil Shrotriya with us. He is the AI transformation leader at Microsoft. He helps financial services institutions in unlocking value from AI. So welcome, Satchil.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we have Dinesh Naidu. So Dinesh is the CTO and Senior Technology Consultant at Renoir Consulting. And with extensive experience in digital transformation and organizational change, Dinesh brings practical insights on successfully integrating new technologies while maintaining operational excellence and stakeholder alignment. Welcome, Dinesh.
Hi, everybody.
So just to set the scene here a bit, research has showed that 94% of Singapore and 68% of Philippines business leaders prioritize AI adoption in 2025, but most are struggling with strategic implementation. So while the business case for AI is clear, HR leaders are grappling with the practical questions like which processes should we automate first? How do we secure budget and stakeholder buy-in? How do we prepare our teams for this transformation while maintaining our people-first culture? And so today we aim to answer these questions and dive into the practicalities of implementing AI into your organization. So first, I will start with Satchil and his background in Microsoft's transformation experience. So Satchil, at Microsoft, you've led major AI transformations. When HR leaders come to you asking, where do we start with AI? What's your first piece of advice?
Thank you. That's a great question. Very happy to be here. Am I audible clearly here?
You sound great.
Yeah. I would say what is different in 2025 versus 2024 is probably last year was the year of pilots and POCs and doing experiments. In 2025, big shift in momentum that we see is around scaling. Exactly what Kelsey, you mentioned earlier. The questions from C-level have shifted, and this is more about how do we scale, how do we rally our people together, and prioritize more value-adding use cases first, and then build a pipeline from there. So two, three things have resonated very well with some of the organizations which have built scale. Number one, designing use cases and largely AI transformation programs by keeping employees at the center of the transformation rather than as an input into the transformation. What I mean is there's one notable multinational bank I'm working with where their entire transformation focus was really about how do we make day-to-day moments in the life of an employee better. So it was a in that sense, a very happiness-focused North Star rather than an efficiency and productivity related North Star. By the way, the bank got ton of benefits and value unlock in terms of productivity, cost efficiency, everything that HR would want. They got that. But what it gave a North Star, which was more around how value is added back to an employee's experience, well-being of the employee. Now, what this would mean is, yes, chatbots can be implemented with AI everywhere. They're not that difficult to implement, but how you orient them towards use cases that add value back to people, that's where there is significant amount of success. For example, our internal experience of Microsoft AI being used for Microsoft employees, both people like me on a day-to-day basis, but also our contact center teams. There are probably 50,000 plus colleagues of Microsoft work in contact centers. And when the initial AI tools started getting rolled out for them, in terms of how do they get better answers when you call a helpline, very quickly it was discovered that about 50 to 60% of the tickets that get raised can be solved very quickly. So rather than a 3-minute call, it starts to becoming a 30-second call, right? Is it a productivity outcome? Absolutely. Everybody enjoys the productivity, but also the experience of these technical engineers who are helping to solve difficult problems versus them solving fairly simple problems. So this is an example of how keeping employees at the center of transformation focus has not only helped employee experience but also unlocked productivity. I'll take a pause.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Those are great insights. I love the concept of taking a happiness first approach. I think that ties in really well with the culture side of things. So moving forward, our research shows leaders struggle with process prioritization. Can you walk us through a framework for identifying which HR functions are actually ready for AI enhancement?
That's a great question. Again, I will pull on the thread that I talked about, right? Keeping human beings at the center of transformation, where the objective is for AI to act as a productivity tool for human beings, not just as an augmentation exercise. So two, three things which find a lot of resonance. First is about how do you make use cases within HR which are a lot more conversational. So one big pillar where we see in terms of prioritization is can you make day-to-day activity of employees interacting with HR or broader company conversational? Example, a simple bot like an ask HR, ask vacation policy, ask for benefits and so on and so forth in a conversational manner. I use it every week for asking simple questions. It actually builds in a lot of trust between people and the AI systems that this thing works for me, right? So that to me is a no-brainer, and every organization should consider it. As we see more and more agentic AI coming in, now we see very strong use cases of this automatically moving from just employee productivity conversational tools to moving into actual process engagement with agents. So there are examples where not only I'm checking my vacation balance, but I can also start dealing with my Jira tickets right from my Copilot experience, which is my day-to-day experience of dealing with AI. So that's sort of the first pillar. The second pillar is around process optimization. It's a big word for saying that use AI to reimagine your process, not just in terms of making it 10% better. So yes, automation is a very useful value, but don't stop at automation. Just think about take an onboarding of a new employee into the organization as an example. For a bank right now, we are doing an multi-agent onboarding journey where effectively through a series of different agents, a new person joining a company can go through an experience of getting the right inputs, right content, right permissions, applying for your laptop, applying for your new device, and so on and so forth, all in an agentic journey. To me, this is a very powerful idea versus the earlier mechanism of saying, hey, there is a web portal, go and follow the checklist, right? Here, the checklist gets followed by agents for you. To me, that would be really about process optimization and reimagination with AI. So not just little bit better, but a lot better, a step change. And the third area that I see in terms of prioritization, what one should think about, is everything around analytics and insights. So this is yes about people, but effectively this is the HR leader or people leader saying that, look, now I have a wealth of information and analytics on the workforce. How do I use these things to make better decisions? To me, with availability of AI, the capabilities on this sides are endless. I'll take a pause here.
I think it's such an exciting time across every kind of industry and discipline out there, but certainly for AI, when it comes to HR, there is a lot of opportunity there, as you said, to look at that data and say, how can we change this, use this information to kind of influence the way that we, reimagine how we approach our people. So yeah, absolutely. What's one mistake that you see organizations make repeatedly when they try to implement AI into their HR processes?
Oh, well, hands down. The single biggest mistake is that making this all about technology, while this is not about technology. Technology, you take company A, B, or C, the technology broadly works, right? If anybody is worried about the risks and the governance, I'm not saying that there are no risks, there are risks, but the risk and the governance and responsible area should be able to take care of most of the issues. The number one point, I won't call it a mistake, but I would call it as a red flag that everybody should be thinking, all of us should be thinking about, is about how do we make it work for people? How do we make it work for process? Rather than saying, hey, go and learn these tools, then it is about technology. It needs to be how this technology can understand my workflows, help me to do that better, and probably out of 10 steps, take 5 or 6 steps away from me forever because that information is captured somewhere. To me, this would be the number one.
Definitely resonates. Thank you. I'll look to Dinesh now to chat more about the consulting and CTO side of things. So, Dinesh, from a technology perspective, what are the most common implementation challenges that you see when organizations try to deploy AI in HR?
Thank you, Kelsey. And I'm going to push back to Sachil at this stage because, again, it's not really a technical challenge. What we see typically in our implementations is organizational challenges. So if I take the number one biggest one I think I've faced in the HR domain is the change management resistance. So AI professionals are really worried and cautious about adopting AI because they see AI as something that's going to be replacing jobs. It's a typical scenario, right? So, in order to get past this, we implement sustainable solutions, we need to make sure that our professionals are very confident about the solutions that they are going to utilize, and they understand the needs and the benefits that are coming through. So, things like talking to them about solutions that are going to enhance their capability in their role, number one, and number two, solutions that are going to take away the mundane, repetitive tasks that they do so that they can go up the chain and provide strategic benefit to the organization, working on things like wellness, etc., rather than just focusing on screening CVs, if I take a typical scenario. So that's the one big issue. The second issue I would say from an organizational perspective is, typically HR has always been left behind on the technology journey within organizations. So where you might have a very mature ERP system that has very mature data that comes out of it, HR systems have been lagging behind. And the challenge is that HR is kind of segmented into four major areas: the HRIS system, the payroll system, the performance management system, and then recruitment platform. And generally, these are four different platforms. So that segmentation of data and getting all that information together in a structured form is going to be your biggest technical challenge, I would say. So, we see companies struggling with that, getting on the AI journey, that they spend 6 to 8 months trying to, where is this personnel record sitting, and what format is that record sitting? Is that data quality good to be able to provide insights? There's gaps there, or all the missing required fields, basically. So those are the structural kind of challenges. And then also linked to that kind of legacy system integration perspective is that the HR systems are typically not as advanced, not as updated as the ERP systems and the more revenue generating systems in the organization. So you'll find that they are on premise, they are stuck in databases that are very hard to work with and don't have open APIs to communicate with. So the idea was to get them up to a stage or a platform that can now communicate in an open API perspective, so the data can be sucked out and then pushed back in. So I think those are the three key areas I would focus on: change management, legacy systems, and then fragmented data.
I see a lot of nodding of heads, so it resonates. And how do you recommend HR leaders evaluate these AI tools and vendors that offer them? What questions should they be asking that they're maybe not asking already?
Yeah, I was sitting in a session last week in a roundtable and fireside chat, and somebody in the audience actually asked the question. So I'm going to steal it from them. And they asked one of the vendors, how do we evaluate the AI solutions that are coming through the door? And the guy that answered was, no one's considering the data protection side of things. And I would focus on those kind of things, what happens to the data when we terminate the contract with you, for example, is a key question I would ask. In Singapore, we have to worry about key compliance areas, GDPR kind of the considerations that we have to make. So making sure that whatever we do has a compliance first approach, asking our vendors to make sure that, can we see the data lineage? We want to see from the time the process starts till the time the process closes, and even after, what do you do so you delete somebody in the platform? What is your retention periods? Those are the kind of questions I would go for in asking. The second thing that I would want to check on is, AI is an autonomous solution. All right. So generally what happens is you put a large amount of data in and it'll automatically process it through a number of steps. But it needs to be trained at every juncture. And generally, some of the solutions that are out there don't give the users the ability to train the solution. So bias detection and mitigation. So what happens when something is slightly not right in terms of the output that you have? How do I, as a customer, get involved to be able to change that? When something goes wrong. So if the AI makes a wrong decision in a recruitment process, how do we go back to you, create an incident, and how long will it take to get closed so that the solution is now improving? Because we can't expect the AI solution from day one to be performing effectively. So we created a KPI at the beginning. Let's say that we want an 80% resolution in a certain process. And then by 6 months or whatever, we want to increase that KPI to a certain level. So we must hold our solution providers, to a specific KPI that we can continuously iterate.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be asking you for that checklist post. And could you walk us through what a realistic timeline looks like for implementing AI into core HR processes?
I think that, compared to digital transformation, and I just need to put some rumors aside because, in digital transformation and data transformation exercise, I'm so Sachil and Anita will bear testimony. It's kind of, you've got the same type of stepwise process. And, you're talking anywhere from 6 months to 24 months to typically implement a solution. Now, AI in its essence has the ability to short circuit that. So the time periods are shorter, but it all depends on the scale of the implementation across your organization. How many people are going to be touching it. But what we're talking to our customers about is, in order to be able to get some ROI quickly, we want to bring those timelines down and not do these monolithic implementations, because unlike traditional digital transformation solutions, the solution doesn't really change. You do a few small updates year on year, but the solution in terms of modules and functionality doesn't change. With AI, it needs to constantly evolve as your data requirements evolve. So the idea is to keep those implementation cycles as short as possible. So in our perspective, doing a diagnostic phase for about 6 to 8 weeks makes sense, right? Getting all of your data in, aligning all of your stakeholders, and then looking at your vendor selection and award process as well. So 6 to 8 weeks. Then in terms of pilot implementation, we're looking at around 8 to 12 weeks. And that's where you take one use case, one or two use cases in your business that you really want to develop out, do the user training and feedback, and then look at the process refinement. What are the mistakes? What are the lessons learned? How do we unpack all of this so that we can improve it? And then you go into full-scale deployment, which would be probably in the region of 9 months to 15 months, where you start scaling up. You're looking at multi-department, multi-solution implementations across the entire business as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. Shifting a bit now to culture and people first transformation. Anita, as Culture Officer, you've seen how technology changes and can impact an organizational culture. How do you maintain a people first approach when introducing AI into HR?
Yeah. Thanks, Kelsey. Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that both the tech counterparts here on the call have really emphasized the need to include people in this entire rollout of bringing AI into organizations. And so I think from a culture standpoint, it's I think starting fresh, new leaf, because a lot of the introduction so far has been AI is here to replace jobs. And so taking away that stigma to say, no, actually, like tech is here to serve you as individuals and not replace individuals. It's easy for us to look at companies and organizations that have let go of talent because they're going to use AI. There have been cases where things have gone down south really quickly. So that isn't a solution. I think there needs to be some time where the examples of chatbots or things that easily can be implemented in companies, piloted, experimented without this culture of I'm going to be blamed or in trouble for getting this wrong. Because fact is, things are moving really quickly with AI, and without experimenting, we're not going to be able to be ahead of the curve. And so that cultural kind of shift needs to happen, that we're open to, in these guardrails of adopting AI in our organization and having, of course, HR be at the seat of the table, is really to say, these are the three things that we're hoping to achieve. We want to be innovative, continue that culture of innovation, have you guys go back to the strategic knowledge workers that you were hired to be versus all of the admin processes, bottlenecks, inefficiencies that organizations are seeing. So it's not to help people work harder and 10x more. It's actually work 10x smarter. That's kind of the notion here. And so how we describe AI in organizations is AI is at its best when it helps to remove friction in teams and organizations and really frees up people to do all of that meaningful work, which I refer to as the human work. I feel we've missed this, unfortunately, of do, and prior to this, I was a chief people officer. And so I have been at that table of, the culture of how high performance matters. Everyone's tech savvy, everyone wants to do things. And now we're in a trend where people are assuming that they can just vibe code something and do that. But actually, that only takes you a little bit further, and you'll need to end up hiring some real engineers to actually do that, to make it work. And so there are these pitfalls that need to be watched for. And so experimentation, yes, pilot it, see if it works, as Dinesh and Sachil have already emphasized. And the biggest part is you're co-designing with employees. You're giving them that permission, like a week, to say, let's internally have an internal hackathon and really go through different use cases of where there's bottlenecks in the company that can be more efficient, where we can be more productive, collaborate better. What are some cool initiatives you want to build? And then there's that exec sponsorship there to then say, we're going to invest in the following AI solutions or recommendations, bots, whatever it might be. And starting with the ask me anything kind of HR chatbot is brilliant. That will already save the HRBP's time in answering the same question for the 100th time in a day. And so I appreciate those kind of quick wins, but also thinking about long term. And so things around reimagining how performance is done. We no longer need to be in these long performance cycles. And, we've seen cases where companies have now hacked this in a way with using AI to say, here's a performance review process in 48 hours. And with Hoogly's context, we're reimagining the traditional engagement survey to say, we don't want to ask you traditional survey questions. We're going to actually ask you about what really matters to you. And that's all through conversational AI. And then you end up getting all the beautiful insights for the HR and the manager to actually do something about it. Which normal cases we find that, that as HR, we're the ones chasing everyone to do action planning and run focus groups. And all of this can take a good 6 months. And then the employee side of it, they're like, I've already given you feedback. You've done nothing about it. And now you want my feedback again for the next survey. Is it just a cycle of lack of trust and all of this erodes? And so I see AI playing a huge role in really being able to design all these new, reimagine every type touch point in HR, from onboarding to how managers get coached, to then how we do performance, how we do engagement. There's a lot of potential in that. And, I agree that AI can kind of take you maybe 60, 70% of the way, but the rest is human intelligence. Like there really needs to be strategic thought into these things. And I think that's where people are kind of like, ooh, AI is going to take over the world. But actually, no, you just need to be ahead of the curve, tech savvy enough to understand what this is doing and how this is going to support your company. And then the last bit for this is the people first approach is really transparency around it. Like why you're implementing a certain AI solution, why are there AI policies structured this way, explaining the why, what, and how success will be measured. And Dinesh pointed it out, like having those milestones along the way to say, we have to reach these KPIs to really say that this is actually working for us or it's not. And there's going to be a lot of shiny tools out there, including myself, Hoogly AI coming in there, but it's about really seeing what's the value add. And I've had, now on my current role, I actually work with organizations around culture and bringing AI enablement into some of the companies that are smaller. And the conversations we have around is, what is your tech stack like? And why do you have all these legacy tools? And how do you kind of go past this? And I love that a lot more people leaders are starting to think like this. They're collaborating hand in hand with the tech leaders in the organization to say, I need this and this to be able to be, this is the ROI of having all of this. And so I'll pause there because I think, I'm happy to hear that we're all aligned on kind of like what that future direction should look like. It's more about the HR leaders really like standing their ground to say, yes, this is a people first approach to technology. I'm not going to be someone who's sidelined or not, have that seat at the table with the tech leaders to say this is how we need to do it in an ethical way, human first way, and do it with like retaining as much of your talent as possible.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, Anita. I think you really hit the nail on the head there with, building that culture of trust. And anybody that's used AI for even the smallest of tasks, I think can attest pretty quickly that you absolutely need that human intervention there to make sense of it and course correct along the way. It's certainly not, a one size fits all quick band-aid on any sort of process failures. So yeah,
I
absolutely.
think everyone that's used AI knows that there's your prompting, all of that really matters. What you put in is what you get out. You can be garbage as quickly. The hallucinations from AI, those are all real. And I think people are starting to understand, oh, okay, there's some good parts that are working, but there's also, I do need to work in some of this. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's a great segue into my next question as well, which is that one of the biggest fears of employees around AI is job displacement. So you've touched upon this, but how do you address that concern, but then also still move forward with implementation?
Yeah. I think the fear is real. Like I said, we've seen companies who, went straight for let's do the layoffs because we're going to bring in AI without even thinking through what that actually looks like. It was way too early for those layoffs to happen. You can see all of these companies now hiring back some of those key talent that they need. So that's one where we really need to be careful of explaining what that role could look like. We want to talk about how it's more the focus should be on how do we upskill employees so that they know how to use AI in their day-to-day. So almost looking at an employee and the core competencies of their role having AI capabilities, AI awareness, intelligence, whatever it might be, weaved into that skill set, that they know how to use AI in a strategic manner to optimize their work. Like that should be the new KPI for every single role. And so once the message is about you need to put an effort to upskill yourself, people feel less threatened about them having, AI replacing their jobs. And so you'll see a lot of talent who are ahead of this curve already and are vibe coding and are like doing all these cool stuff in record amount of time. And you're kind of like, what do you mean you just did that in like couple hours over the weekend? And people are building stuff, and that's great. And it's like it's nice for like an MVP beta kind of version of things. But then we do need like people who can take this to enterprise level or scale these things afterwards. And so employees who have this skill set of I want to learn or unlearn what I thought about everything I thought about technology and start learning what the AI side is going to bring. And second, being able to innovate and have that kind of mindset that, oh, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to study it. And no one like they're people are learning on the go. They are like and the permission of the culture of having that experimentation kind of built in is what's exciting. And so you'll see organizations like Zapier who have an engineer dedicated for HR optimization, and they're going through the entire HR like employee life cycle and like tackling every pain point they have. And this engineer is just working with this chief people officer to solve for these things. And so it's looking really promising if people are willing to, employees are willing to kind of dive in, like go head on and say, I'm going to make an effort. And it can be very intimidating. I think there's a generational piece that needs to be also spoken about, where you're kind of like, everybody kind of dumps on the next generation and like blames, but actually I feel like the Gen Z have it right. Like they have the boundaries set, they have their work-life balance, they know how to be tech savvy. And there's a lot more receptiveness to that. It's folks who didn't learn about kind of like AI or kind of just said, oh yeah, I chat GPT this. And you can tell there's that cohort who still thinks ChatGPT is God, and we're kind of like Gemini and Cloud, and we've moved on, but there are people who are still there. And so we have to bring everyone along with us on this journey. And that's where the L&D programs now should be on AI literacy. Like that's how like get rid of all the comms and all the other stuff that's there. People are good at that now or somewhat, but the basic level of AI needs to be trained and brought into the organization. Things like the hackathon are a great way for people to pair up with all these cool innovators. I'm like, oh, I'm really inspired by this person who just, hacked this out. I'm like, this is cool. Like, how do I become more like them? And it's almost creating that kind of culture. And then it's also reframing AI more as like, a new team member that's going to be part of your team. Like, I think like this mindset of how a new futuristic team would be me, Dinesh, Satchel, and then there's going to be a team of agents, and they need to be part of our stand-up. They need to be part of our, a plans. Like it's going to be, that's where I say the human AI collaboration, that kind of transformation is where we are currently now, where people are starting to think about that. And so I think it's pretty cool. It's more the format of it's not a replacement of people, but rather AI being your co-pilot in everything, your strategic brain, your leadership coach, everything but a therapist. So that's where I kind of draw the line. And then, I think using those concrete examples of where those success stories, use cases where recruiters are spending, instead of screening CVs, they're spending more time having conversations, really going through interviews with what are the leadership behaviors, what are the things, like was there a video that entry that the applicant was able to give and AI has analyzed it to say, this top candidate is top 10, this is who you should speak to first. There's a lot of ways to do that. And then with the upskilling and reskilling pathways, it really helps people see the future for themselves. I think companies need to kind of like show that there's hope behind this and it's not all doom and gloom and we're all going to lose our jobs because of AI. No, like if you're perhaps in the lower end of it, like an administrative kind of role, you want to think about, okay, how am I going to do my job, the one person job role that I have? How am I going to use AI to make myself 10x better at even that admin role? Like, what can I do to optimize? And then their role can be changed into the AI process person that's taken over the admin function, right? Like, everyone's asking for headcount. But if you said, I'm going to save my job by doing all of this cool AI optimization work, that technically this could have been 10 humans part of my team, but I've learned how to optimize all of this, and I'm the single person with my 10 agents to do this. That's kind of the futuristic mindset. And then the last part is really communicating often early, as openly as possible, and not just waiting for a sudden rollout. I think this is where people are kind of like, let's get the perfect rollout. It has to be grand. We're past the 2-year, 5-year strategies. If I see a McKinsey consultant come to me about, and this AI implementation plan over the next 5 years, it's not working. It's not working for us. We're talking about 8-week sprint. What are we going to be able to do in next 8 weeks? What does that look like in 90 days, 6 months down the road? Where do we want to be at the end of the year? That's in the AI lens, which I think both the tech counterparts on the call would say that it's moving so fast, we can't think that far out. So it is literally step by step, but having the strategic mindset to be able to make those decisions quick and fast.
Yeah, great insights. I think again that culture of trust and the reframing, right, as you've said, of really thinking of AI as a partner rather than competition, and how can you use that to optimize your own performance is great. And again, you've done so well. You're answering all of my questions before I ask them, but my next question for you was, what role should HR leaders play in preparing their teams, and not just their HR teams, but the entire workforce for that AI integration?
Yeah, I think with HR, it's more like playing that translator role in between tech and the employees. Like this is where I think a lot of this can be lost in translation. Like I'm pretty sure those companies who went on and said AI, we don't need these employees anymore, and made those drastic decisions, probably didn't have that right CPO in to say, actually, no, here's how we can balance this out. We need a runway of this much time to actually see that all of this AI innovation is going to work before we let go of the talent that we actually need. And then I would I'm as you said, like I mentioned it before, but there would be 3 things I can think of that people can focus on, HR leaders can focus on, is one, the AI literacy that I mentioned, creating that psych safety so that there's an opportunity for employees to voice concerns if they're thinking that they're worried about job security. Like HR should be changing like all of the communications that go out organization wide. And it should be hopeful, it should be promising around, we're innovating and this is how you can contribute. And things like even looking at traditional, like there's a big discussion now on how performance management should be done now that everyone has access to AI. Like, are we paying them for their performance, or how good they are at using AI? So there's this dilemma happening right now, but I would change that into, instead of looking at expectations and have you met expectations and typical performance management type of scale, I would like really look at employees in assessing them on the impact that they've had, and impact and innovation, and looking at how they were able to move the needle on as at an organizational level using AI. And that changes the game completely. Then everybody's kind of like, oh, there's clarity on what is expected of me. If I have impact in this organization and I'm a culture carrier, there's a future for me in this company. It's kind of like this kind of reframe for individuals. And that starts with the communications from the HR leaders and senior leadership that AI is here, but at the same time, we're committed to making sure you're all upskilled and reskilled for that you're future ready. And then there's still need for this kind of mindset of like a lot of creativity, ability, adaptability, and being able to collaborate better across. So one thing about AI now is we're seeing this like less siloed departmental kind of thinking, and it cuts across. like there's so much dependencies and collaboration required by different teams now that it's not a one organization, like one department kind of thing anymore. And so I do see something around being able to HR playing a role in making sure that there aren't silos and teams are collaborating better. And not everyone has the same, like an AI tool that does the same thing, but there's four different tools. That's where the CTOs come and push back and say, no, no, no. But at least being able to see what that is. And I think the last point I'll finish on is that it's kind of less about the tool and the tech stack kind of mindset and really looking at how do we really nurture this culture of resilience and wanting to learn and being innovative in this space. And there's really great success stories of early companies that like I'm obsessed with Lovable at the moment. So that's my current example where I was like, it didn't used to be think like companies like Netflix for their creativity. But now fast forward the Notions, the Lovables, even Sana AI being acquired by Workday today, like that, like for a huge amount of money. And so when you see cases like that, you're kind of like, wow, you have to take a step back and look at these types of organizations. What about their culture has allowed them to be forefront, like killing it in very early days, and then yeah, having these massive acquisitions by which personally I feel are ancient players that are going to now take this super innovative company like yeah, I'm going to watch this closely because it's exciting to see what's happening. But again, as Dinesh said, some of these legacy tech stacks or products in from the HR side, they're not equipped with integrating some of these new AI tools. This is just now going on a tangent, a bit of a tangent here, but it's really like I would love to see the tables flipped, where an AI first led company then goes and acquires some of these legacy products. That would be cool. Totally went off on a AI and tech kind of a world of things, but it's a very different mindset that's required to really move us forward to the future. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. I love the enthusiasm. It is a really exciting time. Lots to see. So shifting a bit to the practical implementation side of things, I want to pose a question to all of you, looking at all three of your perspectives, strategy, technology, and culture. What's the one thing organizations must get right in their first 90 days of AI implementation?
I can start and then hand it over to the guys. I think starting like low risk, high visibility, low risk, pilot kind of things to piloting something that solves a real pain point. And then sharing those results and celebrating those employees who have been able to kind of like experiment and adopt something like that. And it helps to build momentum for the rest of the company to start kind of like thinking in this kind of mindset. And then the culture perspective is yeah, the trust and communication that I talked about is pretty crucial to get this right. Yeah, if there's already naysayers who don't really believe in AI or yeah, it's gonna flop right from the get-go. So that would be my take on that.
Yeah, if I can quickly chime in, I think from a very technical perspective, it's data maturity. Conducting a thorough analysis of your data, making sure that whatever you're going to bring to the floor has value. We don't want to be simulating a lot of the data and putting synthetic data into to improve the quality of the information. So the output is only as good as what you put in at the end of the day. So spending some time, it doesn't have to be more than a few weeks, to make sure that there's standardization in terms of all of your data, that you've got the right templates in place. I always say, if you get the paper process right, the digital becomes easier later. So make sure that your paper processes are standardized. What's your recruitment standards? Has that been applied across all your entities? If there's any gaps in the process, let's fix those first. Make sure that the data is mature, and then layer the technical infrastructure on top of. Satya?
Yeah, agree with both the panelists here. I'll go take a slightly different angle on this one. I would say my number one thing would be about role modeling. for maybe one or two leaders to stand up and say that, look, we are going through this. Even I, as a leader of the organization, whatever C-level person is there, even I don't know everything. In my private life, when my office VPN is switched off, I'm trying every possible tool. Here is what I'm learning. I'm designing a birthday card, I'm playing with this meme or whatever. But I'm doing this, I'm playing this in my private life, in my public life. I'm writing an email, I'm creating this. I think that kind of very visible sponsorship, right? And role modeling that I am going to use this. There is no turning back for me in person. I think this is very, very helpful because, as exactly Dinesh mentioned, there are going to be data related issues. Will they be solved in a day? No. Right? Even if you have done 6 months implementation, will everything be solved? No. Right? I think the challenges will remain. They will remain for 12 months. They will remain after 3 years. Will everything will be solved? I'm telling you, it won't be, because there are still legacy technologies from 20 years back. Still, we continue to have problems. Right? There is no such thing as done. Right? So everything is going to be work in progress. Hence, at least one or two senior leaders saying that I am changing, this topic is done, I am changing, please come with me. I think that kind of creates a sense of buying on everybody to move forward.
If I just can add one other point, I think just comes to mind. People also need to take a compliance first approach, because data, we're dealing with really people's information here, and it has the highest classification in terms of data protection, right? If you've got that 90 days, make sure that you've set the baseline for what's going to be your compliance posturing, right? What are the regulatory requirements that affect your data? Mapping things like PDPA in Singapore to GDPR, and what are the gaps? Because later to try and layer compliance after you've built the solution is a very hard prospect, trust me. And then, trying to, create data owners and data stewards and all of those kind of things becomes very difficult. And the data has already become democratized. You've already given the application access to everybody in the company, and now you want to close the gate. So rather making sure that you set that up from the front and say who's the audiences for the data, who's going to control the information, because we don't want this to be an IT-led or a project again, right? We want data to sit into the people who are going to be consuming it. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you all. And another one I have is, if you had to give our audience 3 actionable steps that they could take, let's say next week, to start their AI implementation journey, what would those 3 steps be?
Okay, I'll shoot with one. Understand your business and pain points. Go back to your process. So look at your HR processes, find where the gaps are in that process. And then once you've identified those gaps, prioritize those gaps in terms of, what are the biggest pain points in your process, taking the most amount of time or resources to complete. So if we can look at that one area, you'll get the best ROI at the end of the day out of your solution. Don't look at it from a technology perspective first. Don't look at it from a solution perspective first, because you're going to try and take a box and try and make it fit in a round hole. Thanks.
Yeah, I think piggybacking on that would be like, yeah, picking one of those processes and piloting something that is small and that where there's an opportunity to learn fast. I think this is where everyone thinks about solving every problem and not prioritizing, and that's not, you're not going to get far with it. It will be overwhelming. Like I've literally had HR leaders say, I have no idea where to start with this. And similar to what Dinesh has just said, like you can look at all those pain points, list those first, and then talk about the prioritization, and then picking one of those to like really pilot and start small and really learn fast.
Yeah, agree with all the points mentioned. I would add a slightly different spin to it. I would say that look at all the AI projects and initiatives running in your organization with the lens of a new intern who you really, really want to succeed. Right? Imagine a new, energetic youngster walks into the office, and after working with them for a week, and you're like, "Oh, this is amazing." Right? I want this kid to win big time. I see this person as the C level in 10 years, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make this person successful 10x. You take that mindset, now take this kid away, and now use that mindset to every AI initiative you are working with. I want to make this better. Just the way the kid who walks into the office on day one with no years of experience, it's going to make mistakes like every other thing, right? It's this expectation that it's called artificial intelligence, and many other firms have put tremendous amount of hype and marketing around it. So you see, like this person needs to cook a pizza, write a poetry, and dance for me. No, it's not going to happen, right? Just like the intern who has walked in, this tool is going to make mistakes, but I want it to win, right? To me, that shift around, I will make sure that this wins, everything that Dinesh and Anita mentioned about, giving it the right framework, giving it the right data, grounding it in realities, picking the right use, all those things are right. But I think what my observation has been in last 2.5 years working with several large financial institutions, there is always a set of mindsets and behaviors which is like, I'm going to sit in my chair and wait for it to fail so that I can point it out to, I told you this, I told you that, I told you this, all of these things I told you 6 months back in our workshop, none of this works, right? So you didn't even give this kid a chance to succeed, right? What if we were to step back and not make to borrowing from Anita's language around this human intelligence and artificial intelligence? Let's put it together and use the same framework, right? We want it to work, we want it to win, and we can make it win. To me, this shift in all of us is going to make that new intern successful and the new AI initiative also successful.
I'd just like to very quickly add on, tangibly, how do we make sure this happens on the ground? Helping very large organizations, we do that in two ways. Exactly what Sashil said. Number one, we call it management action teams. So in every department that this is going to be rolled out to, we need to identify key people in that department to do two things. Number one, be part of the process. This is not an IT-led implementation. This is a HR department-led implementation. Who's the business partner? Who's the person that's going to be responsible and going to champion this in the organization to make sure that change management and sustainability is there? And then the second thing is we need AI champions within our own business. I always say this. We can't externalize the problem, so we need to identify people in different departments that are going to go on training, that are going to become AI ahead of everybody else and drag people along from the internal. It mustn't be an externalized thing. We need to entrench AI professionals in all of our departments in our organization and not look for other people to give us advice. We need to be going to the IT teams and saying to them, listen, guys, we've seen that we can optimize our processes doing X, Y, and Z. Can you now come up with the solutions for us and not the other way around? Back to you, Kelsey.
Yeah, great insights all. Thank you. I have one final question for you. If you could turn back the clock just a bit, what's one piece of advice that you wish you'd had when you started your AI journey? Perhaps there are many in the audience today who are about to begin theirs. So what is that piece of advice that you would have liked to have had before you embarked? Go ahead, Dinesh.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I'm still learning, right? It's such a new field of expertise, and things are changing so quickly. So I think that personally, I find that I constantly have to challenge myself. There's nothing that you can take for granted, even from a week-to-week perspective, So I would say if I started a year and a half, 2 years ago, don't have this expectation that things are going to be the same 6 months from now. The tools are going to change, the solutions are going to change. The way you think even is going to be put into question. So I would have a look at the AI hype cycle by Gartner. It's a really good resource to understand what are the kind of things that are in the hype cycle rather than what's going to be around for a long time. So, having spoken to a number of different professionals, look at what are the tools that are going to be here 2 to 3 years from now, like Sachil mentioned, agentic AI, which is only going to get stronger and bigger and able to achieve success, rather than looking at something that is very specific in terms of LLM, that tomorrow is going to be put away by DeepSeek or whatever, comes along as the latest greatest. So look at what's going to consolidate your AI solutions that has the most amount of integration capability, rather than focusing on pure single solution products out there.
Yeah, really tough question. I don't have a perfect answer for this because, yeah, everything has been changing week to week. So I think for me, it's almost going back to that initial question of like, what's that human pain point we're solving for, and what friction are we removing, and where are we at, like in terms of using AI to solve for those, and going back to always less about the hype and the tools and what's new and exciting, because literally a week by week, every AI model is taking over one another. And so you can't just say, oh yeah, we're gonna like work with OpenAI on this, and then 2 minutes later, we're like, oh crap, Gemini is way better in this, and DeepSeek, etc. It's just I think for me a year ago would have been, yeah, I didn't have a magic 8 ball to predict the future, but it would have been more getting prepared mentally around how fast to move, like from a efficiency lens, and bring people along with me on that kind of mindset. Like I do feel like now, as I'm going to speak at these conferences to HR leaders, there's a great sense of we are behind. And so that could have been mitigated a year ago with this kind of change in mindset, without all this AI is taking over the world kind of messaging. And so now we're undoing it, and it's all about automation. And then there's, of course, the smarter folks that are talking about agentic AI and how agents are going to change the world. And so I think there's just a big mindset shift on that. And if I'm starting fresh, it would be really to kind of look at it pain point by pain point and see what we're solving for and make those best decisions, but be not so fixated on that, because it can change a week from now or 2 weeks from now. And so, yeah, experimentation is welcome. That's it from my side, Kelsey.
Yeah, resonate a lot of these messages, what Dinesh and Anita mentioned. Because I would call out one thing, probably 2 years back, I would go back and I would tell myself to ignore the hype cycle, the read cycle, the respond, convince, debate, discuss cycle, and I would go on only one cycle: build something useful. I would go 2 years back, get a few like-minded people within organization, outside organization, a few students, a few 60-year-olds, a few 10-year-olds, bunch of them, and just build lots of useful stuff and put it on GitHub for someone else to use it. And that's about it. I would change one thing 2 years back to now, because the models can change, the vendors can win and lose and whatever. But if you have built useful stuff, it will get used. It will get used as a component into something else. And to me, the real North Star for most of the young developers or engineers who are building something right now is to ignore everything that every day comes in a news cycle, and just focus on building something useful.
Fantastic. Great insights from you all. Thank you. That concludes our webinar for today. So thank you all so much for joining us for Omni's Strategic AI webinar. We hope you found this conversation insightful. Please keep an eye out for follow-up email with resources to today's conversation, as well as information on how you can join Omni's HR community and keep in touch with our panelists. So thank you all again. Appreciate your time and hope you all have a great day.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Kelsey.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
You too.